Hey, welcome back! Today we're going to be talking about 5 things that you really need to edit out of your writing. They're weaknesses that cause your writing to just be flimsy. But if you take them out, your writing becomes bold and exciting and powerful. Whenever I introduce this idea to my students, a lot of times they're very hesitant at first because it looks like a lot of work to edit these out. And yet, after trying it out a little bit, their writing improves so much and so noticeably that they get very excited about it. And so here they are, the 5 weaknesses you must remove from your writing as soon as possible. Weakness number 1 is expletives. Wait a second. Isn't an expletive like the word poop? Poop! Yes, one definition of the word expletive is profanity. And so songs with an explicit rating tend to have lots of profanity in them. However, that's not the kind of expletive we're talking about here. In English grammar, an expletive is a placeholder for the subject. When a sentence begins with the words it is, there is, or there are, those are expletives. They're fake subjects. They stand in the grammatical place of a subject, but they aren't actually the subject of the sentence. Technically, what comes afterwards is the subject. It is a nice day. So when you construct a sentence like that, basically what you're doing is you have the phrase, a nice day, and you don't have an actual verb to fit it with. So you just slap it is on the front of it, and it becomes a grammatically correct sentence. But even though it is grammatically correct, it is a very weak and pathetic sentence. And it's lazy because you're not picking something more interesting to say. So how do you fix it? Well, the easiest way to remove an expletive is simply to drop that it is, it was, and combine that noun phrase, whatever is your actual subject, with another sentence. Or find a good verb that goes with your noun phrase. This nice day brings me great joy. That's better. As you're looking to remove these, don't forget that contractions sometimes hide them. Its is a contraction of it is, theirs is a contraction of there is. And you shouldn't be using contractions in your formal writing anyway. Okay, so you've removed the expletives. The second thing that you need to remove are the demonstrative pronouns. The main demonstrative pronouns are this, that, these, and those. And why these pronouns are a problem in formal writing is that they tend to be very vague. You can also often structure them as weak sentence structures, similar to your expletives. That is great. What a lame sentence. Remember, a demonstrative pronoun is one of those pronouns that points to something and says, look at that. Look at this. However, it's closely related to a thing called a demonstrative adjective, which is a very useful kind of word. Look at that trash can. Look at these fingers. A demonstrative adjective has a noun immediately after it. And so the this, that, these, those clarifies which noun I'm talking about. In your writing, a lot of times we use demonstrative pronoun as a shortcut to talk about some vague idea that I don't want to boil down into a concrete object. And that's lazy. Now, I suddenly say, this means... ... There's my demonstrative pronoun. How do I fix the demonstrative pronoun weakness? Well, demonstrative pronouns are incredibly easy to fix. Whenever you have one, all you need to do is put a noun right next to it, and it becomes a demonstrative adjective. Instead of this means, say, this concept means, or this quote means. Instead of this is, say, this mistake is, or fit something in there that fits, some kind of noun. If you do that, your demonstrative pronouns are no longer vague. They become nice and specific demonstrative adjectives. Weakness number 3. You've gotten rid of your expletives, you've gotten rid of your demonstrative pronouns, and now we need to get rid of passive voice writing. In order to explain passive voice writing, it definitely helps to have a grip on auxiliary or helping verbs. So in the English language, as well as in many other languages, we have main verbs and we have helping verbs. The main verbs are either action verbs, things I do, or linking verbs connecting me to a sense of being. I am happy. But we also have a category of verbs called the auxiliary or helping verbs. When placed with a main verb, they change something about the main verb. Maybe it changes tense. Instead of I run, I might say I will run, and now it's in the future tense. Or I am running, and now it's in the progressive tense. You don't have to know all of that in order to understand this particular concept. But know that when you take the being verb, which is am, are, is, was, were, be, being, or been, and you place it with what's called the past participle, which is usually the ed ending, but there are exceptions, such as the verb to eat, which comes out as eaten. So when I take the being verb and I add that past participle, it changes the voice from active voice to passive voice. So when I say I eat, that's me doing something. I eat broccoli. Broccoli is the thing being eaten. I am the one doing the doing, eat is the action, and broccoli is the object, the direct object being eaten. However, when I switch from active to passive voice, adding that be verb to that past participle, notice what happens. I eat broccoli is active voice. I am eaten is passive voice. Does that mean something different? Yeah, dramatically. I'm no longer the doer, although I'm still in the subject position. I am being done to, receiving the action. So when I use passive voice, the action sort of backfires onto the subject. It treats the subject as an object. I am kicked, I am hit, I am slapped. The action returns to the subject. Why should we not use passive voice in writing? There are some situations where it's okay. However, in most formal writing, it's very weak. And the reason is that the subject becomes vague and blurred. I lose focus on who is doing the action. And so the sentence loses some of its power. An active sentence, though, is, by definition, active. It's got energy. And so it increases the energy of my writing. How do I fix that? Well, I am eaten could be rewritten to the dinosaur eats me. Now I've found the real subject, and I put it back in its place. Sometimes the subject will be there. So, I am eaten by a dinosaur. All I have to do is rearrange, and I've got my sentence in active order. Sometimes, however, I don't know who did the thing. I can still use an indefinite pronoun in that place. Someone kicked me, even if I don't know who the person was specifically. Okay, so after I have fixed my expletives, I've fixed my demonstrative pronouns, I've turned all my passive sentences back to active voice, number 4 is my adverbs. There are lots of different parts of speech. The weakest of them all is adverbs. There are some particularly useless adverbs that we sometimes put into our writing which never should be there. The word very, for instance. That is a big dog. That is a very big dog. Really, the word very has no impact whatsoever. It's supposed to intensify, but it doesn't. It means nothing. It's just filler. It's extra words. Similarly, I could say the word so or really. Those kind of adverbs need to go. But once you begin to expand your scope and look more carefully, most other adverbs are really pretty useless as well. Extremely, supremely, superbly. These could be replaced by stronger verbs. And sometimes we use them as patches to cover up the fact that we don't want to think of a good verb. If you take the time to find the right verb, it makes your sentence much more interesting than a slapped-on adverb. So how do you fix these? Well, fortunately, adverbs are very easy to remove without changing the meaning of the sentence. You take them out, nothing happens to the sentence structurally. With one exception, and that is the adverbs of negation. Don't remove the word not or never. They're essential to meaning. And then after you've removed your adverbs, look carefully at your verbs and see if they need some spicing up. So finally, we have one more weakness left to remove. We've removed the expletives, we've removed the demonstrative pronouns, we've removed the passive sentences, and now we've removed the adverbs. Finally, the very last and the hardest one perhaps to remove is the being verbs altogether. Now the good news is, if you knock out all the being verbs, it will also fix a lot of your other problems. You're unlikely to have expletives without the being verbs. You also can't construct the passive voice without a being verb. I went through all the others first, though, so you could see the specific reasons for removing them. The being verbs are hard. They're not the easiest thing to remove. When you start searching for them and noting them, you'll find, as an amateur writer, that you tend to use them as a crutch. There are 3 ways to remove them. The first way is fairly simple. Just replace the being verb with another verb. However, 99% of the time, this doesn't work. And even when it does, you're usually just replacing it with a linking verb. which isn't the strongest kind of verb. So usually you're going to have to do it a harder way. The second option is to combine the sentence with a sentence that comes before or after it. Often you can condense down what happens by removing that being verb and turning the rest of your sentence into something like an appositive or a phrase that can be attached to a different sentence. For example, you could say, Mr. Nance is my teacher. He loves narwhals. Could I combine those two sentences and remove that is? Mr. Nance, comma, my teacher, comma, loves narwhals. Oh look, I condensed it down by turning the first sentence more or less into an appositive. And that will work some of the time. The third way to fix it is simply to completely revise your sentence and find a better way to say things. That's a lot of work. And a lot of times it feels pretty painful when you're looking at that and going, oh man, I'm gonna have to completely rewrite this thing. 2 points of encouragement. Number 1, it will be worth it. When you take out all those being verbs and rewrite your sentences, your writing will sound stronger, it will feel stronger, and you will be impressive to your reader. As a second point of encouragement, I want you to think about this as a challenge or a puzzle to solve. A lot of times my students moan and groan about this rule as soon as I lay it down, but a lot of them discover that it's kind of fun to try to revamp the sentences and find a way to remove the being verbs. It becomes a kind of complicated grammatical game, yielding rewarding results. This may seem challenging at first, but the more you practice it in your writing, the more you'll benefit. And when you're trying to write something to impress someone, like say a college application letter, removing these 5 weaknesses will have an impact. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or watch another video on writing, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Those kinds of flimsy adverbs definitely have to go. But really, once you begin to